Welcome back. President Trump announced an outline of a long-awaited health care plan this week. It involves cash payments to Americans to deal with their health care costs as they see fit. I want to bring in our political panel, Marc Short, Republican strategist, former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence, Elleithee, Democratic strategist, former communications director at the DNC. Marc, I'll get to you on immigration for a second, but on health care, this is not a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. It has many long-discussed Republican ideas. How would you evaluate its political and legislative future?
I don't know there are many Republican ideas in this, Major. I mean, let's start with the fact that, I was a Hill staffer 15 years ago when Obamacare passed. And in addition to being promised you could keep your doctor if you like them, you were also promised to lower costs. Why do we need subsidies if it was going to lower costs? It's been an incredible failure. That's why it's like costs are through the roof.
Access has been increased, but costs have been going up.
They were promised costs would come down. What we're doing now as Republicans is saying, hey, you know what? We're going to compete with Democrats on who can give more subsidies.
Who can give more money?
Yeah, who can give more money? You're always going to lose that against Democrats. They're going to give out more taxpayer dollars than we are. The plan includes price controls on drugs, which has been a priority for Democrats for quite a long time.
White House now embraces them dramatically.
Absolutely, this White House does. But it's, again, they're continuing toward populism, big government. It's not offering any sort of Republican free market reforms.
Or conservative free market approaches.
Correct.
So you're down on it. Do you think the Senate or House Republicans will give it even a look?
Sure. I mean, I think
that it's obligatory. They have.
Well, he continues to have a lot of support, and I think there's a lot of Republicans in a midterm cycle who are concerned about affordability, and so they're going to go along with the notion that subsidies is the right path. I just wish instead they'd be offering, here are solutions from a different perspective to lower costs, as opposed to trying to compete with who can give out more money.
Maybe we'll hear from a gentleman named Mike Pence about that in the not-too-distant future. Mo, what's your sense?
I love having this conversation with Marc because I can just sit back and watch, a real conservative take
Right, in some sort of semi-agony.
But the subsidies that just expired have resulted in people's costs going up by, on average, $7,000, I think $7,500. President's plan is to, rather than give the subsidies, to just write a check to people, I assume with his name written, signed in big bold, right?
Featured.
Instead of to give it to health insurance companies. But it's not lowering costs.
But $2,000, right? So people are still going to be paying more. That $2,000, which is the number I keep hearing Republicans floating, no guarantee that people will put it into the healthcare system.
Right.
They could spend it on anything.
Right.
For a lot of younger people, they may choose to drop out of the healthcare system, use that $2,000 to pay for rent.
Spin the health roulette wheel, which young people sometimes do.
Right. And so people then get pushed out of the market, which causes premiums to go up even higher for those who are still
in the market are less healthy by comparison. Marc, I want to ask you about immigration. When you were with Vice President Pence, first term of the Trump administration, were the kind of things we are seeing now discussed and quashed, or are we seeing a kind of intensity on immigration enforcement on the interior of our country that even you didn't expect to see?
I think there are some in the White House that always favored this approach, Major.
In the first term.
I do think it's different, though. I think that our nation had an open borders for 4 years during the Biden administration. And so the number of illegal immigrants has swelled. And I think that ICE has an incredibly difficult job. And it's made more so difficult when there are Democrats who are encouraging these sorts of protests. Having said all of that, Major, I think there is a difference between saying we're going to go after the worst and the criminals versus saying let's go pick, a city where we know it's going to be inflamed to make an issue. And I think there is
something inherently provocative about that.
Absolutely.
And going into high schools and going into businesses.
And I think there's even, reports out today that the president's grown uncomfortable with some of these visuals. And so, I think that there's often too much criticism from the left, not necessarily Mo, but from the left about our ICE agents who have an incredibly difficult job.
Calling them fascists and things like that.
They're doing a law enforcement duty, and there's too many politicians trying to get in their way. But at the same time, there is a way of saying we're going to go after the worst of the criminals as opposed to, as you say, let's find a sanctuary city where we know this is going to get inflamed.
Mo, evaluate what's going on in Minneapolis.
It's terrible, it's tragic, and it is part of what I believe is the strategy by the White House. Look, Democrats they missed this argument during the last
during
election.
the Biden administration.
Right? They're too slow to acknowledge that people had very real concerns, which then opened the door for an overreaction, an over-response by the other side. This president likes to flex muscle. He likes to show strength, whether it's domestically or internationally. And the chaos is part of the strategy.
I want to ask you if Democrats are still missing this. I want to play a soundbite from the Gavin Newsom podcast. His guest was Ben Shapiro. Let's run it.
Your press office tweeted out that it was state-sponsored terrorism, which, I mean, Governor, I do have to ask you about that.
Yeah.
That sort of thing makes our politics worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, our ICE officers obviously are not terrorists.
Yeah.
A tragic situation is not state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, essentially he's retracting and backing away from something his own press office put out.
Look, the American people are actually starting to sour on what they're seeing, right? They are souring on even ICE. I saw a poll recently that showed that for the first time ever, a very slim majority of people actually support abolishing ICE. Now, I don't support abolishing ICE, but I do support real reform. I think the more people are upset about what they are seeing, the likelier we are to have reform and maybe even scale back some of these policies. Democrats don't take your foot off that gas.
Mark, you've got 30 seconds. Mark, you got 30 seconds. You get the final word.
We talked about the overreaction. I think there's already some Democrats calling for another government shutdown over the next funding bill to say we're going to zero out ICE, which would be a total overreaction. I think on this particular podcast, I think it's a challenge the governor's going to have, is that he has a large support among those who believe he's anti-Trump, but trying to placate a lot of conservative talk show hosts, he ends up getting in trouble with the left, too.
Mark Short, I promise you the last word. You get it? Well, Elleithee, it's great to have you both here. Please come back.
Thanks, Major.